The setting sun cast a golden glow over Westlake International Airport, its light filtering through the tall windows as passengers rushed through the busy terminal. Laughter, rolling suitcases, and distant announcements blended into a familiar airport symphony. David Carter walked through the terminal with effortless confidence, his tailored navy suit crisp, his polished shoes tapping lightly against the floor. A sleek black carry-on rolled behind him. He had spent the last week in back-to-back meetings, negotiating a high-stakes corporate deal that would reshape the airline industry. Now, he was heading to London to finalize it. David wasn't just another businessman. He was the CEO of Carter Enterprises, a powerhouse in logistics and global trade. His name carried weight in boardrooms across the world. Yet today, none of that mattered. Today, he was just another traveler. And today, he was about to be reminded of something he had fought his whole life to overcome. At Gate 27, David handed his business class boarding pass to the gate agent with a polite nod. She scanned it, then hesitated. A brief flicker of something crossed her face, something unreadable but unmistakable. Then she forced a smile. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Carter." David tucked the pass into his pocket and walked onto the jet bridge, stepping into the cool, perfumed air of the aircraft. A flight attendant, a woman in her 40s with a tight, professional smile, greeted him. Her eyes flickered over him briefly, assessing. "Good evening, sir. Your seat is just to the right." David nodded and found seat 3A, a spacious business-class seat with a neatly folded blanket and a waiting glass of orange juice. He exhaled, setting his bag in the overhead compartment. After the intense week he'd had, all he wanted was a quiet, peaceful flight. But peace was not what he was about to get. Just as David was settling into his seat, the same flight attendant reappeared, her smile now uncertain. "Excuse me, sir," she said, shifting uncomfortably. "May I see your boarding pass again?" David frowned slightly but handed it over without question. He noticed no one else was being asked. She studied it, glanced at the seat number, then at him. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "There seems to be a mistake," she murmured. "This seat wasn't supposed to be assigned. We'll need to relocate you to economy." Silence. David blinked, his fingers tightening around the armrest. "I don't think I heard you correctly," he said slowly. The flight attendant lowered her voice, as if hoping to keep the conversation private. "There was a system error, sir. We need your cooperation." David kept his expression neutral, but his pulse quickened. He had been here before. The quiet challenges, the unwarranted scrutiny, the subtle but sharp reminder that, to some, he didn't belong. "I paid for this seat," he said calmly. "My boarding pass confirms it. I'm not moving." She swallowed. "Sir, please." By now, other passengers were watching. Heads turned, whispers started. David saw the discomfort flash across the attendant's face. She hadn't expected him to refuse. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," he said, keeping his voice level. Her eyes darted toward the galley before she nodded stiffly and hurried away. A few minutes later, a man in a crisp airline uniform approached, his badge read cabin manager, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Carter, I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience," he began. "But due to a system error, this seat was assigned to multiple passengers. We need to move you to economy." David let the words hang in the air for a second. Then he folded his arms. "So you're telling me this seat was double booked, and I'm the one being asked to move?" A flicker of hesitation, a barely noticeable shift in the manager's stance. "We're trying to handle this as smoothly as possible," he said, avoiding eye contact. David exhaled slowly. This wasn't about a system error. This was about something else. Before David could respond, another voice spoke up. "Sir, I just checked the flight manifest," a younger flight attendant said, stepping forward with a tablet in hand. She scanned the screen, her eyebrows raising slightly. "There's no error," she announced. "Mr. Carter is in the correct seat." A heavy silence fell over the cabin. The cabin manager's face paled. The passengers who had been eavesdropping exchanged glances, realizing exactly what had just happened. David saw it too. The supposed mistake wasn't a mistake at all. The manager cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. Uh, yes. Well, thank you for checking, he muttered, his tone shifting. Mr. Carter, please enjoy your flight. The younger flight attendant offered David an apologetic smile. Can I get you a refill on your drink, sir? David met her gaze and nodded. I'd appreciate that. As she walked away, the manager turned and quickly disappeared into the galley. David leaned back into his seat, feeling the familiar mix of frustration and resolve settle in his chest. This wasn't new to him. But that didn't make it any less exhausting. As the plane taxied to the runway, David reached for his phone and typed a quick message. Within seconds, the cabin manager's radio crackled. A sharp voice came through. Accommodate Mr. Carter immediately. The manager froze. His eyes flicked toward David, realization dawning. David's phone vibrated. A notification popped up on the screen. Transfer completed. Carter Enterprises has officially acquired 15% stake in Westlake Airlines. He exhaled. Now there would be no more questions about where he belonged. As the plane lifted into the sky, David gazed out the window, a small smile forming. This was more than a personal victory. It was a reminder that power wasn't about titles or wealth. It was about knowing your worth and making sure the world never forgets it. Success isn't measured by appearance, but by perseverance. Stand your ground. Let your success speak for itself.